Oh boy, I think that might be my new favorite Godzilla movie. Okay, so Godzilla versus Destroyah. It's half the reason I started this whole watching every Godzilla movie thing in the first place. It's one I was really looking forward to. It is the climax, the end of the Heisei series of Godzilla movies. The past like 6 or 7 movies that have been building on each other, they all lead up to this point. This is it. This is the big finale, the climax, the movie where Godzilla dies, which is something that has not happened since the first Godzilla movie back in 1954, which is still canon in this universe, and everything from that movie comes back in a big way in this movie. And I pretty much can't explain what was so cool about this movie without just spoiling everything. So here's what it's about. So the movie starts out, opening credits sequence. Immediately you know something is going wrong because Godzilla is just smashing the shit up out of Hong Kong, and he's glowing orange all over his body. Steam is coming out of him, and he's blasting like just everything to smithereens, and he's just going crazy. His eyes are like bright orange. He's just like, he's glowing. So it's like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? And as it goes on, these scientists, they have like this young guy, looks like a teenager, who's like super obsessed with Godzilla or whatever, and they bring him onto this team of scientists at the G-Force. I don't think I mentioned that in these movies there is a organization that is built to defend Japan from Godzilla, and they call themselves G-Force, hilariously enough. But yeah, this guy joins the G-Force, and he discovers that Godzilla's heart is a nuclear reactor, and Godzilla's body is performing nuclear fission, and that is slowly raising his body temperature. And when the body temperature gets too high, when it reaches 1200 degrees Celsius, Godzilla will literally melt down and cause an explosion so incredibly massive it will not only destroy all of Japan, it will create a hole in the Earth's atmosphere and destroy the entire planet and kill all life on Earth. So the stakes are raised immeasurably high in this movie. And so, while the team of scientists is trying to figure out how to stop Godzilla, they come up with a few different ideas. Meanwhile, there's this other scientist guy who just discovered this new field of research and technology he calls micro-oxygen. And he basically says, he hasn't discovered anything that wasn't already there in nature for us to find, but, he's basically opened up a way for us to access this new realm of technology, and this is where things get pretty awesome. We bring back Emiko, one of the main characters from the original Gojira in 1954. She's now an old woman. This takes place 40 years later. She is now an old woman, and she is basically begging her relatives and friends to get the scientist to stop what he is doing, because his research is almost identical to that of Dr. Serizawa, the man who invented the oxygen destroyer, which was used against Gojira in the 1950s. And if you haven't seen the first movie or my review of it, just to recap, Dr. Serizawa brought the oxygen destroyer down under the sea with him and used it to kill Godzilla, and then killed himself and burned all his research notes so that no one could ever recreate the oxygen destroyer, because it was more powerful than an atomic bomb, and he didn't want humanity to have access to this power, because obviously atomic bombs were already way too much. Like, that was something humanity never should have had to begin with. So to have something even more dangerous than that is like, that's a no-go, I can't have this. It's just too much. And yeah, so while all that's going on, eventually these people who are tracking Godzilla, trying to find a way to stop him, the young guy, Godzilla fanatic researcher kid, he decides that they need to use the oxygen destroyer once again, the original weapon that killed the first Godzilla. We have to bring it back, even though it's incredibly dangerous and should never be used by anybody, yada yada yada. So I don't remember exactly how it happened, but somehow an oxygen destroyer is set off in an aquarium, and we get this great scene of like a night guard seeing all of the fish disintegrate into bones and just screaming like he's witnessing a horrific disaster unfold before his eyes. And then so they take the footage of the fish being disintegrated underwater, and they slow it down, they zoom in, and they notice a tiny little microscopic organism that existed in the Precambrian era floating up out of the bubbles, and they see this little creature, sort of like a tiny little crab-like thing, whatever it is, and basically new life is born out of this oxygen destroyer, and that new life goes on to become many very large scorpion-like alien-looking creatures. They're sort of demonic. If you've ever seen Attack of the Clones, there's like a scene where the Jedi are strapped to they're chained to these things in like this big arena, and they have to fight these big ugly CGI monsters. One of those monsters is like a big green thing with like a Venus flytrap mouth. The monsters in this movie look like that thing, but red instead of green, if you can imagine. And they crawl around on all fours. They've got smaller mouths inside of their mouths, like the alien from Alien. And basically, it turns into a sort of like action horror movie for a bit. Like it's kind of like Aliens, where there's a scene of these military guys with machine guns like walking through a dark hallway with their flashlights on, and it's really quiet for a while, and then suddenly one of the monsters bursts in through the ceiling and they all start shooting and screaming. And and one of the monsters is like attacking this lady, and she's in a car. It keeps reaching like further and further into the car, but it can't quite reach her, so it starts like shooting lasers out of its mouth, and it cuts the car in half, and it's just crazy. This whole movie is exciting, by the way. This is like one of the rare Godzilla movies where the human characters and the plot and the monsters are all equally entertaining throughout, hence it being my new favorite. And so, anyway, so these monsters, they all slowly sort of mutate and get larger over time. They eventually combine into one big, crazy-looking monster and start flying around. And at this point, Godzilla Jr. has made an appearance. He's called Godzilla Jr. now. He wasn't in the previous movies. He was just the new baby Godzilla. And now he no longer looks like a doofy little big-eyed goblin fuck. Now he actually just looks like a younger Godzilla. He's a little bit smaller, but he looks like a Godzilla now. I mean, he's green, but other than that, he looks like what you'd think the son of Godzilla would look like. So they dub him Godzilla Jr., and Jr. gets into a fight with this big red monster, which, I don't remember if I mentioned this already, but the monster is named Destroyah after the oxygen destroyer from which it was born. Even though technically his name should translate to Destroyer, they just decided to leave it as the Japanese pronunciation Destroyah, so his name is Destroyah. Very odd. I don't know why they decided to make that choice. It's not like we call Space Godzilla Sepesu Gojira, like Sepesu Gojira. No, that's stupid. Then again, Space Godzilla is a stupid name also, but disregard that. So Godzilla Jr. gets into a fight with Destroyah, and it's awesome, and he actually, like, kind of beats the shit out of him. It's pretty cool. And, yeah, eventually, the G-Force guys, they develop a way to actually stop Godzilla, the burning Godzilla, the one that's, coming close to a nuclear meltdown. They find a way to use freezing technology, cryogenics, to just freeze him in ice. And there's a scene where they catch him in the ocean and they freeze him, and it's pretty sick. The effects work is really good. And then eventually, once we get to the film's climax, it just ramps up to 11 right at the end there, because you get Godzilla Jr. fighting Destroyah, and Destroyah is bigger and badder than ever. He's like a really cool, intricate, demonic looking design. He's a really cool monster. He basically wrecks Junior's shit, and like, I think, was it? Okay, no, yeah. Burning Godzilla and Godzilla Jr. meet one another in the city, and they just kind of, look at each other for a moment, and then Destroyah just swoops in and starts beating the shit out of him, and he straight up kills Godzilla Jr., and it's actually really sad. Like, they really ham it up. Like, there was this woman who, she was there when Godzilla Jr. was born from his egg a couple movies ago, and she sort of built up a bond with him, and like at the end of that movie she even had a cliched, "Go on, get out of here, I can't keep you," like that sort of thing. She had a whole scene like that with him, and she called him baby throughout the whole movie. She acted kind of like she was his mother in a way, like he imprinted on her or something. And she's there in this scene, and seeing her reaction to Junior's death actually made me a little sad. And even worse than that, seeing Godzilla's reaction to it made me a little emotional, because there's all these people, these onlookers, and they're narrating the whole thing, going, "Oh no, like, Godzilla's crying, he doesn't understand why his son is dead," and it's like, oh my god. Yeah, and it just, the thing is, burning Godzilla doesn't really put up much of a fight. through most of this climax. He kind of gets his ass kicked. He gets like dragged around the Bay Area quite a bit. But then the thing is, the closer he comes to meltdown, the more powerful he becomes. So he's like glowing bright orange at this point. His dorsal plates on his back are starting to melt, like literally melt, once he reaches meltdown point. And so he's just blasting the shit out of Destroyah with his atomic breath, which is now orange, and the beam is just getting bigger and stronger. And he's not the one who delivers the final blow, funnily enough. The G-Force actually come in with their Super X-3, an even bigger, better looking aircraft than they've ever had before, and that's what delivers the final blow, is them and their big laser cannons and shit. And they basically win. They kill Destroyah. Godzilla doesn't win the fight for like the first time ever. But it's at this point that Godzilla starts to actually melt down, and as the G-Force is spraying him down with their cryogenics again to reduce the radius of the blast, Godzilla transmits some of his energy and his life force into Godzilla Jr. During the last moments of his life. And you do see Godzilla melt, like literally you see his body just kind of crumble and melt down, and it looks really like, it's kind of graphic, but you can also like not see it that well. So it's just like this really cool shot of him melting down, and it plays the sad music, and it's genuinely like a heartfelt, emotional moment, at least as emotional as it can possibly be while being a stupid kaiju movie about guys in rubber suits slapping each other around. And the final shot of the movie is Godzilla Jr. Roaring into the night, and he is now fully grown. He looks like a fully grown Godzilla. And it's beautiful. It's like one of the best looking shots in the franchise as far as I know. I really like the way that looked. And the end credits roll over black and white images of the original Gojira. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? The first Godzilla was my favorite movie for a while, in the series, and all the callbacks to it are really cool and really, like, they're used very tastefully and very well. I love the fact that this movie not only feels like the natural conclusion to the Heisei series, but to the series in general. I feel like if this was the last Godzilla movie ever made, it would have been a fitting end for the franchise. I don't know if Godzilla's ever had an ending per se outside of this one. Like the other, final movies in his series have been just kind of like, what even else is there? I know there was Destroy All Monsters that takes place at the end of the Showa series timeline, but like in those movies, Godzilla's son didn't even grow up. Like, Destroy All Monsters is in the future, and Minya still looks like a little fuckhead. So, no, yeah, and that movie is like really boring until the big monster fight at the very end. So like, I think Godzilla vs. Destroyah is not just one of the best Godzilla movies, I think it's just a damn good movie in and of itself. I'd give it a very strong 8 out of 10. I considered giving it a 9, but like, I don't know, I'll have to see it again sometime. It was really cool. I love the concept of burning Godzilla. I love how high the stakes were raised. I love the visuals and the aesthetics in this movie. I love Destroyah's design. I love Godzilla Jr.'s design. I love the pacing, just everything. This movie was awesome. I don't know. It's just one of the greats. Definitely recommend this one. If you don't want to go through the trouble of watching every single movie leading up to it, I would definitely recommend the Heisei series as a whole, like all 7 of them. Like, definitely, if you just wanted to, see like one good, solid story arc for Godzilla movies, just watch the first one, and then watch everything from Return of Godzilla through Godzilla vs. Destroyah. I think that's a very strong, solid narrative. The worst out of the Heisei series is probably Space Godzilla, because that one was just kind of like thrown together like short notice, but like even that one has its strengths, it's not by no means is it a bad movie. Damn, I can definitely see why people call this their favorite series of Godzilla, because all in all, it was a wild ride. I'm really glad in the end that I decided to go this route of watching all the Godzilla movies, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have gone on this journey, and these are all just so badass. And I'm talking about this like this is the end, because it is a end, but I still have a ways to go before I've seen them all. this is only the 22nd out of 35 movies. So, yeah, damn. I'm looking forward to what the future has in store. I can't wait to see if there's ever going to be a Godzilla movie that tops this one for me. Like, I'm still suspicious of Shin Godzilla. I think that one could still definitely be my new favorite once I get to that one, but that's pretty far off, and we've got a lot of things in between to go through. So it's just, god damn. I'm just so pleased by this movie. I can't even. I'm just gushing about it now. Should probably shut up before I drone on way too long. Next movie is it's well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I suppose. See you in the next one.